Hello everyone, this is Mahira, aka MC Aquila, and I am the creator of the Triforce of Power Legend of Zelda fancomic and MOONBLAST, the Pokemon fancomic, and I also co-write the Winter's BLIGHT YA fantasy series. And today, we are going to pull back the shame curtains on a very special two-part edition of The Wall of Shame, looking at my very first vaguely salvageable novel-length works. Because I wrote a novel-length work in middle school, but it was complete and utter garbage, which is pretty normal for, whenever you're starting off in middle school, you're just writing for yourself then, and no one has to see it except for your sister, who you share it with, because she's very tolerant and kind. And so I wanted to be a published teenage author, and I think I was around like 16, 17, and I hadn't achieved that dream. And then I had this idea for these two books. It started off as one book, but then I was like, and at first I thought it was going to be a trilogy, but I was like, no, two books. And they were basically inspired by my insane obsession with Final Fantasy VII. That was my entire headspace as a teenager. That and Kingdom Hearts, which also does come into play, but Final Fantasy VII was a big thing for me then. And so, in case you haven't listened to any before, the Wall of Shame series is basically stories I invested a lot of time in and have nothing substantial to show for it. So I completed these two books and I shared them with readers. I did try to query them and I did not get a response because my query letter was bad because my books weren't very good. But boy howdy, did I believed in them. And oh my goodness, there's so much to say about these books, but let's start with two of the main characters. The first was the main protagonist, Shahal. He is the blonde. I guess he might not have his hair colored yet. I'm recording this before I record the rest of this video. He's the guy with the long hair and the scar over his eye. You could tell I made him when I was a teenager because I was like, he has to have a scar because scars are cool because they're cool. No good reason. But it was part of his sad backstory. And he had the saddest backstory. He was raised by an evil scientific corporation. Oh my gosh, I feel like everyone has had, well, not everyone, but many people have had an OC who was raised by an evil scientific corporation who did evil experiments and were just evil to him. And then afterwards he got sent away to a surrogate family who was not very nice to him, but he did wind up in a really nice little a nice little farming town, farm boy, Cloud and Zach, and but then he made friends with some of the townspeople, and he actually kind of was coming to like his life there, even though his surrogate family didn't like him very much. And then the town was burned to the ground, and his friends, especially his best friend, died. Everyone he died. His lousy family survived, and they're like, well, you're not going to come with us, so go get a job. And he was like, okay, I'm going to join the military. So at first he had no agency. He was just like, well, my family told me to come here, so here I am. Let the adventure begin. And a lack of agency is very normal for young writers. Well, at least it was for me. He had no agency. He was just letting things happen. And in retrospect, if I had known more about human nature, I could have said he had a terrible life so far. He's lost the best friend he's ever had. He's lost the town where he didn't hate living in. Any plans he had for the future there are gone. He could be just depressed and yeah, he totally, like, that could actually be, like, a good part of his character arc, that he starts off in this, like, depressed state, and then that is something he has to face throughout the story. And that's very difficult whenever, like, you're in the military and a war begins because the other country who shares the continent with you, actually maybe they were on a separate continent, but the other country that's closest by kills one of your people, one of your princes or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but anyways, yeah, so he joins the army. And oh yeah, and because I was a teenager, 20 years old was like really old to me. So I was like, well, all these characters are 20 years old, and some of them are like in high military positions, which makes no sense at all. I did try to justify it in that magic is a thing in this world. So I was like, well, their magic is really, really good. The people who are in higher command, even though they're like wee and experienced little kiddos who are barely out of their teens. But yeah, in retrospect, it makes no sense. Also, his long hair. These characters, their hair is too long to be in the military. It's not very practical. It could get in the way. Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. I did not research. I did no research. Oh, I remember writing whenever he comes to, join the military. He comes to the base that he's going to be working at. Oh yeah, I didn't give them names. It was just North Base, West Base, South Base, and East Base, which is a thing. I think he was at the West Base. Yeah, he was at the West Base, I think. Or the East. Either one. Anyways. So, and like, they had dorms. They didn't have barracks. They just had like these nice dorm rooms. And like, that is such a dumb mistake. Like, if I had just spent like maybe just like 1 hour doing some basic research on what military is actually like, I would have known better. I mean, I guess that some military bases, I think, have different sort of sleeping quarter setups, but like, like that's not what if I had known better, I would have had them in barracks. But anyways, so he comes to join the military, and and then like they started off with this like going into this dojo where each soldier joining the army gets like a personal little like physical test where they have to fight like a high-ranking captain or an agent, and that makes no sense. Like, why would they? This is a fully functioning military base. Like, why would all these high-ranking people be spending their time basically being like a welcoming committee? I was like, especially like they do this every time they get in a new batch of soldiers. It doesn't make any sense. Oh gosh. Anyways, do research. Don't be like me. Do research. So anyways, so he goes there, and then he meets, okay, this kid's original name was Lonu, which is an awful name. So if I rebooted, I think that later on whenever I was doing editing, whenever I still thought that I was going to publish this, I changed it to Lonn, which works better. It's still not a great name, but it's, but I'm sure there are some people who have it. It's just not, it doesn't fit his character very well. I would have given him a more, I don't know, metropolitan name, I guess, because he's a dummy. I don't know. He's a city boy. That's the word I'm looking for. He's not a dummy. He's a city boy. So he meets the city boy, Lonn, and they look very similar. I tried to make it like, oh, they're identical, like long lost twins, but like even whenever I was drawing them, they didn't look that similar. But anyway, so the whole story is Lonn and his sister Mint is the girl with the short hair. They are two in a set of triplets, and so it's them and a brother who disappeared. He vanished. He was kidnapped by who knows who, and he's been gone for ages. And then here comes Shahal, and he looks very similar to them, and they're like, maybe you're our long lost brother. Which is yeah. So one thing I really enjoyed about this was that Shahal was just incredibly skeptical, and the more he got to know them, the more he was like, I really don't want to be related to you guys. Like, he does come to like kind of like them. It's hard because they're all kind of terrible people, but yeah, he's not into that, especially because like their family's not that great. Their father's kind of a He's a lot. He was a general in the military, and he was very much a not the type of soldier who is a good role model. Like, he did his duties very well, but he was also very much the get your hands dirty to get the job done kind of guy, you know. So not exactly the best person to be hanging out with. Sorry if you're hearing sounds. My screen just went black. Anyways, so he meets this guy. Oh yeah, and of course Lonn is like a captain because I was inspired by Zack and Cloud, obviously, which kind of cracks me up because at first I thought Lonn was going to be a good guy like Zack, but no, like, he's the worst. So, like, remember how I said Shahal's hometown was burnt down and a lot of people died? Lonn did that. It was part of like a weird like hazing thing that happens whenever you reach a certain rank in the military. You get sent on like terrible missions that involve murder and torture, you know, all these bad things, and that was it. Of course, he got sent to burn down that specific town that Shahal was in, who he thinks might be his long lost brother. What a coinkadink. And so that was fun. I think that was the best part of writing this, is that whenever I wrote the first novel, The Silent World was its name, I did not know that Lonn did that. So I had Shahal he was eventually pursuing this mystery of, you know, the military done this. He found clues that this was their fault. And he was like, okay, like, I want to find out who did it, because this is the only thing I really care about, is finding who it is and getting justice or revenge. He didn't have enough agency to decide he really wanted revenge. Like, I don't know. He's a nice kid, so I don't know if he would be like, you're gonna die because I need vengeance. But he definitely want some kind of justice. Sorry for stuttering. Good gracious. Anyways, so I didn't know that. I didn't know Lonn did this until I was finishing the second book. I wrote 2 books, and I'm at like the very last chapter of the second book, and Shahal's like, you know, we've solved all the other problems. We've defeated the evil corporation. We stopped the war. We did all this cool stuff, but I never found out who burnt down the village. And Lonn's like, oh yeah, this is awkward. So basically he's just springing it on me and Shahal at the same time as I was writing what I thought was going to be the final chapter of the second book. And I was like, well, now I have to rewrite everything. I was so mad, but it was a great experience. I had never had a character like surprise me and keep secrets from me in that way. It is very frustrating, but it's also very awesome because that was the first time I got a sense that like these characters were their own quote unquote people basically, and they were outside of my control. Like, they would do their own things, and it sounds insane. Honestly, so much stuff with characters and writing makes it sound like you're crazy. It's like, I don't control these characters, they do what they want, but like, they're fictional, you made them. I don't know, it's hard, it's weird, it's fun, but it's weird. But anywho, so yeah, they became friends, and Lonn realizes, oh crap, I burnt down this guy's village. Gotta keep that a secret, otherwise he might not want to join the family if it turns out he is our long lost brother. And so that was fun to go back and rewrite, with him just like constantly lying. He's a pretty good liar, I will say that. He's good at lying and flirting with girls. I think of the flirting thing, I did it for fun, but then I realized like, this is just like, I realized that like, yeah, he's just doing this to like make himself feel better about being a terrible person. Him and Mint are not great people. Like, Mint was really mean to Shahal at first, and it's like, there's no reason to be so mean to him. I mean, see, again, my writing was not that good. So Mint was this chaotic, sassy girl, and she was also a pretty good soldier. She was very skilled. She was strong. She had this water magic that she and her brother both had water magic. and they could use it very well. They were very competent. I mean, as far as like I could write competent characters at that time whenever I didn't really understand what I was writing about. But, you know, she got stuff done. But she was just really kind of mean to him, just like picking on him a lot. And like he's going through a very difficult time, and she's just there being like, he, I'm just picking on you. You so silly. And he's just like, please stop. And she's like, nope, never gonna stop because I'm mean or something. I mean, she liked him. She was just, I don't know, she was just kind of a jerk. She just didn't know how to be nice. It's like, you're 20 years old. Just, gosh. Anyways, in retrospect, I really could have made like backstory reasons for her to be a jerk. Because like I said, their family is not great. Their father was kind of crazy. And I know that even at the time, I figured out that she was kind of like acting weird and mean because that was part of her being like kind of sort of rebelling against her father. Like she was still joining the military. Like he would have like brainwashed his children into being like, you know, that's your destiny. That's your destiny. You're going to serve the state. You're going to be in the military. That is your calling in life. That is where your purpose and meaning as a person comes from. Like, you know, like he wasn't great. So like there was a lot I could have done if I had known more about character writing to establish why Lonn and Mint are just like people you wouldn't want to have as your siblings. Yes. So Lonn and Mint were friends with, I can't remember if her name was oh gosh, I can't pronounce it. Svedna or Sedna. I'm just going to say Sedna because it's much easier to pronounce. She's the girl with the curly hair, with the twisted braids and all that. She was like dark Aerith. I mean, because obviously I remember being inspired by Aerith's design whenever I was designing her and whenever I was initially planning her. But she's just also very mean. She is working for the other country who they're at war with, and she was pretending, because she's been living in Shahal and Lonn's country like most of her life, so she's like pretending to help them out as like kind of, you know, helping giving them information on what the other side is doing, because I think that like she did live in the other country for a little bit, or maybe she grew up there and then she immigrated. I don't remember, it's been a while, but she betrayed them. And later on, she's working with the evil corporation, and they are committing like all these human rights violations. And she's like, I'm just here to help the animals who they are being mean to. And yeah, I don't know what her deal was. I remember I really liked writing her because she was really unlikable, and I could just have her do whatever I wanted her to do. But she also wasn't very strong, so she was restricted. It was kind of fun writing a character who kind of like ruined her life and then was very frustrated about it and didn't really know where to go from there. It was my first time working with a character like that, so that was kind of fun. Oh yeah, and Shahal had a little crush on her. He had a thing for redheads, for sure, because he had a crush on her. She had orange hair. And then in the second book, he met, what was her name? Celsia? And she was curly ginger hair. She was so cute. She was the sweetest character. I think that they wound up marrying, but not in the book, after the book, but not for very long, because Shahal had an early death. He just had the worst life. Oh my goodness. So yeah, so Shahal I learned a lot from this because there were so many tropes and things like that I still do that I first experimented with in this story. I'm going to break it down to the things that stand out the most as things that I learned from, but that also make this story just not viable. Okay, so the first one is Shahal's backstory. He was a wind spirit originally, who was captured by the evil science corporation, and then I guess he was basically just like put into an empty vessel. It was messed up. And so, yeah, that had to do with this whole big backstory of this big epic thing I was writing, it was kind of like a Marvel Universe thing, where there were these little stories I had planned, but then they all added up to fighting Thanos, right? So with this version, though, instead of Thanos, I was like, let's bring in the Egyptian gods, because what about this vaguely cyberpunk story with some magical elements doesn't say this is building up to a story where they fight, oh, I'm going to mispronounce this, a Pep, who is like the sun eater snake. And one of the characters in this story, I did not draw him. His name was Seth. He was Set, who was on a redemption arc because, you know, in the original mythology, he was an antagonistic to Osiris and Horus, right? Yeah. He was often an antagonistic figure. And I was like, well, I want to redeem him because I don't know. It wasn't one of those things where I had like a weird villain crush. It was just, it sounded fun. And I love Egyptology. Like, I can't even say. So, yeah. So like, there was this whole thing where they were going to fight the giant snake at the end of this big Marvel Cinematic Egyptology universe story, but they needed a spirit of each of the 4 elements. They needed a wind spirit, a water spirit, an earth spirit, and a fire spirit. Shahal was the wind spirit who they needed. So, like, he would reappear later on in this big cinematic universe story. But, like, I'm looking back on it and I'm like, aside from that very big plot that really doesn't really have a very good connection to these characters, there's really no clear reason for him to be a wind spirit, because there are no other spirits except for a water spirit character who is the water spirit that was needed for like that big snake showdown thing. There are no other spirits in this story. They have no place in this story. So it's like, so that doesn't work. But the problem is that him being wind spirit is an important part of the story, because it controls different things on how he behaves, how he reacts, how his magic works, and mostly like how he is an inexperienced soldier who is thrown into this extremely dangerous and crazy war, but he doesn't die. Well, he almost dies, and he would have died, but he survived because of his abilities as a wind spirit. So, oh yeah, and then like he levels up at the end of the first book. He manages to save, Lonn did not deserve this. He manages to save Lonn, who is mortally wounded, by basically transferring his magic. Because whenever you die in this world, if you are a magic user, your magic is also just like, it depletes like your blood depletes. So giving someone your magic is basically like giving them your blood, giving them a new leaf on life. So he did that, and normally that would kill you. And I will say, young me actually did set that up, which I am impressed with my young self. In a couple of the earlier chapters and during the war, they talked about magic transference. And then it came back at the end of the book. And yeah, I'm impressed I did that, because I did not do many things well. There were many things I did wrong in these books. So yeah, at the end of the first book, I did that. And that also led to this wonderful cliffhanger where he, of course, after transferring his magic, he should have died, but he survives because he's a wind spirit. And he and Lonn are found by Sedna, who is working with the evil corporation at this time. And she's like, well, I never liked Lonn, so I'm just going to leave him to freeze to death because this took place in winter. But yeah, we'll take Shahal back into the evil science corporation that he hates, and almost had a panic attack whenever he visited them earlier in the book. I mean, she wasn't there, but like, she should know how much. No, she knew how much he hated it. And she's like, well, I'll take him back. And she's like trying to, there was someone else. Oh yeah, Seth, whatever, was working with her at that time because he was spying on the evil corporation. And he's like, wow, this is a really jerk move we're making, isn't it? And she's like, it's fine. She's like, it's fine. And like, she felt a little guilty, but like, she, oh gosh, she was just the worst. Maybe she was the true villain of the story and not the president or whatever of the evil science corporation, you know? I mean, she wasn't strong enough to be the real villain, but like, you know, yeah. Anywho, yeah, so anyways, there are all these different things in the first and second books. Oh, okay, one final thing. That was a good cliffhanger, though. I did like that. I still kind of like that, because Shahal's alive, but he's been captured. Lonn might freeze to death unless if somebody helps him. And it was set up that like there was someone in the area who might be able to help him. And so whenever I sent this out to people who were kind enough to read it that time, they were like, "Oh my gosh, it's a cliffhanger. This makes me want to scream," you know? And that was very satisfying. Yeah, so yeah, wind spirit, not tenable. Egypt mythology stuff, not tenable. And the Egypt mythology also came into play in that Shahal had this magical book that belonged to, well, Set was looking for it because it was like the book of truth or wisdom that, I'm going to mispronounce this, Thoth had, the little birdie. The IBIS? I would say Heron. He also showed up in book 2. Yeah, so there was all this stuff that just doesn't make any sense, but was integral to the plot. So yeah, it's not gonna work anymore. But yeah, so I think I was going to talk about like a list of like new things this taught me that like, I'm sorry, I should have scripted this more. I thought I scripted it enough, but this is getting long. Anyways, this had a lot of new book mistakes. The characters were not well written. A lot of things didn't make sense. My big cinematic Marvel Universe dreams were very silly because they just didn't make any sense because I didn't know what I was doing. And the Egyptology stuff was just random. It was just too random. I mean, it wasn't like this was absurdist or anything. I didn't know what I was doing. And that's normal. That's totally normal. But it is shameful looking back on it. You don't know how serious I took these. I thought these were going to be my big break, this duology, these books with these terrible, mean characters. And it was not my big break. And just thank goodness, because if these were what I was known for, I would be extremely mortified and would probably hide my identity. I would be writing under a new pen name, and oh boy, yeah. So anyways, that is the first half of the Wall of Shame on these 2 books, this duology. The next one will be about the other 2 main characters, because I just write people in batches like that. And yeah, so I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye-bye!